5 steps over 5 videos on how to buy your first property. And this is video number 4. Hey, what's up guys, Dan Trevidi here. I hope you're all well. So this is video number 4 of 5 in the 5 steps on how to buy your first property, whether that's for you to live in or whether that's for your first buy-to-let investment. And it is probably the video that you have all been waiting for, which is all about where is the cash? How are you going to afford to buy this property? But before we get started, if you could do me a huge favor and smash the like button, and don't forget to hit subscribe and the little bell icon next to it. So we are now going to get straight into the video. So by now you would have seen videos 1 to 3, which is mindset, the type of property and how much it's going to cost. And now it's the big one. Where are you going to get the cash from? And look, this is going to be a no frills, straight to the point, no pink fluffy stuff. How are you going to do it? And it doesn't matter what set of circumstances you are in right now, we are going to find a way together in this video on how you are going to find a way to buy your first property. So straight away, the first one is access to cash via your family. If you have a rich mum and dad, or a rich nanny and granddad, or auntie and uncle, or you're a trust fund baby, then don't deny yourself. That is the easiest form of access to cash. And if you have enough sat there that you don't even need a lender, go and find that cash and go and get into property. First of all, there is no point in looking what has happened in the past. When I bought my first property, there was like 100%, 105, 110% good old Northern Rock mortgages. Look, they just don't exist in that old format anymore. So there is no point in crying over spilt milk. You cannot change the cards that you've been dealt with. You cannot change what is in front of you right now. We need to maximize the opportunity that is right in front of you as of today. And look, when I was getting those properties back in 2006, 2007, using those mortgages, I was looking back in 2001 on how much prices were then and how easy it was to self-certify and get a mortgage then. And I'm sure in 2000, 2001, there's people looking back to the mid-90s and asking the same questions about what was going on in that market. You are always going to find a set of circumstances that have happened previously that you think would make your life easier if that was still happening today. But guess what? It isn't how the world works, and you have to put your big boy pants on and just get on with it and use what you've got in front of you today. Most people watching this video, most people getting started in property do not have access to cash or large enough cash pots to put down in the form of deposits. And these can be anything from 5% of the purchase price right through to 25 or 30% of the purchase price if you're looking at your first investment. So it's all relative to you, your set of circumstances, where you are on the spectrum and your geographical location. Because a 5% deposit in Great Yarmouth, where property prices are like 60, 70,000, is completely different to 5% in London, where property prices are like 250,000, maybe even more. So again, it is all relative, and it's going to be easier for you to find your deposit funds if you're buying in a geographical location where the property prices are cheaper. But that doesn't mean that they are necessarily the better properties, because you may have things like capital growth that don't grow as well as some other areas where property prices are a little bit more. So finding the happy balance and the happy medium in terms of prices, bearing in mind what I've said on the previous videos, is absolutely essential. So pushing all that to one side, forgetting the actual property prices for a second, if you don't have access to cash, you will need to use a lender, and that is either a buy-to-let lender, a first-time buyer mortgage, or a standard residential mortgage, or a bridging loan, or private investment. Whatever it is, you will need to get some form of debt, and the debt has to be made up typically by a contribution from you in the form of a deposit. And contrary to what most trainers say, you can't go and get a credit card and whack that on as a deposit, nor should you. You need to find the cash somewhere and somehow. So the best thing to do is to find the type of property that you're looking for, the right location, how much it's going to be, what type of mortgage you can get, which comes from talking to a mortgage broker, and that will give you an idea of how much you need to raise. as well as all the costs on top of it that I talked about in the previous video. And it's then your mission to find a way to save and earn enough money to have this little pot of cash that will enable you to take a leap forward. And this is where true entrepreneurialism comes into play. This is where the men are separated from the boys, or the women are separated from the girls. You are about to step up and be counted. And the world is filled with people who don't own a property because they found a reason why they couldn't save up the funds. But let me give you some harsh realities. There is absolutely no one in any set of circumstances that cannot get into this position. This is where discipline, focus, determination all start to take force over the situation. First thing is, we'll start with the income that's coming in through your job or your career. Now, you need to limit anything that is non-essential in terms of spending. So all those handbags and shoes and trainers and nights out and expensive meals, they need to go. You need to start maximizing the amount that you're earning, because guess what? It's not what you earn, it's what you keep. Then after you've stripped out a lot of the non-essential costs, everything that is essential, try and get better deals wherever you can. Everything from soap to shampoo to kitchen towel, it all has a compound effect on putting more money or leaving more money in your bank account. In terms of putting more money into your bank account, you need to start to do things out of your 9 to 5, Monday to Friday job. I used to say that when my career daytime job ended was when the real work started. And you will spend a lot of time in the evenings and weekends not getting a great deal to start with, but it is all a means to an end. This is everything from selling stuff on eBay to buying ex-display stock and selling it in car boot sales. Whatever it is, you need to absolutely maximize your time for income outside of your extra salary, which is putting more money into the pot of cash. And before you know it, the pot of cash will start to build up. It's going to take some people longer than others, depending on how much the cash is that you need and require, which is all dependent on the type of property and the location that you're going to be buying it in. Other ways to raise funds through buying property is working with investors. Now, this is really for the buy-to-let guys. If you have some property experience and you can work with an external investor on a commercial relationship, as long as you're telling your lender who's lending you the money for the buy-to-let mortgage on how you're structuring it and they approve, then this is a great way to raise those deposit funds. But bearing in mind that the security and the risk profile is higher to the investor, so their return is gonna have to reflect that. So you may end up paying anything from 5 to 10 to 12% on those funds. So make sure there's enough meat on the bone, juice in the deal to cover those additional costs. But it is a great way to raise funds. So that's the deposit taken care of, and hopefully most of the fees associated with paying and buying the property. But here comes the rest of the costs, the refurbishment, the labor, everything else that goes into that property. And it doesn't matter if you're doing it to live in or you're doing it to rent, you've still got those costs. Now, if funds are really short and you're not much of a DIYer and you have to bring in other people, then you cannot do this on a whim. You need to make sure that the funds are coming in at the right time to be able to pay those bills. And you may be using salary, which is great. So if you can negotiate terms with a builder to pay him every 2 or 4 weeks to fall in line with your next paycheck, then what you're doing is you're stretching the time it takes to pay them to fall in line with when you've got cash coming in, which is a really great cash flow strategy in order to get these projects through. The other thing is 0% credit cards. Now, I do not care if you are completely cash strapped or you've got millions of pounds in the bank. When you're coming towards the end of a project and it's fairly big in terms of your overall portfolio and your overall cash pot, then 0% credit cards are a great way to harden your position. What do I mean by that? Let me put it another way. I've just recently converted a barn, and I'm not going to tell you exactly the cost, but it cost me over 7 figures. And I've done it all with cash, no borrowing. And I didn't use all of my pot of cash to do it. But I know, because I've been through a period where I nearly lost everything, that when you have cash in the bank, it's a lot easier to borrow cheap finance than it is when you have no cash in the bank and you need finance and you can't get it at a decent rate. You end up paying over the odds for it. So towards the end of this project, I started taking out 0% purchase credit cards, and I started buying the last of my big purchases for this project on 0% purchase credit cards, even though I had the cash in the bank to pay for it. It enabled me to harden my position. I was in a far stronger position because I could pay those credit cards off at any time, and I have done. I also left myself in a position of strength because I kept cash in the bank should any cost increase, should costs come up that I wasn't expecting, or should a great deal land on my doorstep where I need to move super quick. I've effectively got a pot of cash to do all that with for 0% because I've done the last big purchases with a 0% credit card on those last big purchases. And it wasn't because I didn't have the cash, and it wasn't because I couldn't afford it. It was because I know that I needed to harden my position. And it's exactly what I did, because guess what? We went into lockdown, some cracking deals came up. I picked up one amazing deal, and I was able to do that because I left myself into a great position because I was using finance to my advantage. I was using good debt to my advantage. Now, be very mindful of when those 0% end dates do finish. I had a tracker on my Excel spreadsheet monitoring this total spend and when those end dates came. And I was making payments every single month. It was interest free, just eating away at the balance. So it was gradually eating it down. And the second the 0% was coming to an end, bang, I cleared it off. It was good debt. And anyone who doesn't get this, I'm sorry, you need your heads tested. This is a great way to harden your position. Equally, when it comes to furnishing the properties, you can go to some retailers and you can negotiate some great discounts for cash. And you should always do that. And that cash can be there because you've gone and bought some big purchases on 0% credit cards, and you can then leverage that and negotiate better deals on the items that you're buying. But some of these retailers, they do not offer any discount for cash, and they offer you 0% APR on these purchases, things like sofas. Again, it is a complete no-brainer. It is like someone giving you interest-free cash. And remember, you can pay these off at any time. This isn't about buying stuff that you can't afford. This is about buying stuff you can afford, but in a far leaner and smarter way, because the worst thing you can try and do when things are against you and you run out of cash is raise more cash as a property investor. Doing it whilst you still have cash is the most savvy thing you can do as a property investor. And you always end up being able to pay it off because you sell the deal, or more rental income comes in, or you just have the funds and you pay it off when you are content to do so. And please don't be afraid of that. The old school way of thinking that I must never get a credit card, I must never borrow any money, I must only ever spend what I've got in my bank, is one of the main reasons why people never ever progress beyond a rented flat, and they never put themselves into a position of wealth. I actually had this conversation with some friends that I went round for dinner the other week, and my point that I put across was that if someone was to give you £1 million today up front, and all they wanted was £1 a week every week for the rest of your life, would you do it? And the answer is always yes, because the two don't seem relative to one another, and they're not. The reality is that would probably never happen. But the principle of borrowing 0% funds is exactly the same. Why would you not put yourself into a position of financial strength for a relatively low cost, which is not relative to the cost of those funds? And that is one of the most important lessons that you as a property investor or property owner can ever learn. And it's one of the biggest difference makers between people who become financially free and wealthy to people who never do. So, really quick video on the costs. I'm not going to get into any of the other detail of raising funds, crowdfunding. We could talk about this for literally days on end, but it's relative to buying your first property and reverse engineering back to the type of property you want to get, what position you're in today, and what you need to do to get it. And everything else is a means to an end to get to that point. And you should just focus on that point. Doesn't matter if you've got a low paying job. It doesn't matter if you're self-employed and you don't know when the next paycheck is coming in. It doesn't matter if you have really bad credit. There is always going to be a way in order to get your first property. That's it from me. Hope you found the content rich, and I'll catch you all on the next video.